Hey guys, due to popular demand, I am doing a Pittsburgh Pro review. I have never had so many DMs to do a review on the Pittsburgh Pro or on any show actually than this one. I said I was going to do one going into it and it was so time consuming I ended up not doing it. So I'll do this review after. Hopefully you guys like to hear what I have to say. But I do think it was an awesome, amazing show. It was basically a junior Olympia. This show was very telling of, I think, what is going to happen at the Olympia this year. We got to see some awesome competitors, some really big names. We got to see the comeback of Janet. So did the judges get it right? Let's go into it. So first off, let's go ahead and go into the scorecard. So first place, Laura Lee, awesome package, 5 points for a perfect score for first place. You actually had perfect scores going all the way down from first place all the way down to fifth place. So if you look at it here, 5 judges scored Laura Lee first. 5 times 1 is 5. Ashley, a perfect score for second place. Everyone thought she was second there. Janet, everyone thought she was third there, 15 points. Looking at fourth place, awesome newcomer, Liana. I think this is her second pro show ever. And she went from, I think she got 15th place at the Girl Power show a week prior to fourth place at the Pittsburgh Pro. Huge potential for Liana. And that's in front of, Tyler and Sandy, some real big name judges that are there this time. So watch out for her. She's got a ton of potential going into it. And we'll go into her physique here in a second too. Now, really surprising is that, Liana beat India with a perfect score. So that is a battle I think we will see again pretty soon because they both need to qualify for the Olympia still. I think Liana should definitely keep going and get that Olympia qualifications. I think she's right on the hair of it, and India is too. So probably within the next show, you're going to see the next couple of shows. I think you're going to see India and probably Liana get into that Olympia coming up soon, based on the momentum from here. I mean, they're beating some pretty big name people. I mean, if you look at India, we're wondering how good she was going to be when she came back. She took out. So first off, in sixth place, Allison Testu. Looked awesome. This is the best complete package that she's brought. Even took out Ashlyn Little, which was surprising. Ashlyn had a ton of momentum going into the show, winning 3 shows this year so far. Everyone was thinking that she was going to be in that top 5, top 4 potentially in this show. I don't think her physique was too far off to justify her being in that top 5, but it just shows how tough that show was. And it also shows how good Liana potentially is going to be, beating someone with that much momentum going into the show, winning 3 shows already this year. And then if you look at that, even beating India on top of that, India taking out Ashlyn at that show too. So it really mixes things up. I was watching Ashlyn bring this new package that she's been bringing to the shows. I thought it was an awesome package. It's definitely a different package than what she was brought before. Just a little bit of a different look. And I was like, man, this might be the look for her. This might be her top 5 Olympia look, And so looking at this show and how people are taking her out that I didn't think would, I'm not sure now if that's the case. Now, is she going to make a change in her game plan going to the Olympia now based on this feedback of running into some of these surprises? I imagine it would be, because she's going in winning these shows with perfect scores and then coming here and losing to India and losing to someone who got 15th place at Girl Power, who she just beat a week prior. So was she just a little bit off from week to week? Is that what it was? Or is this just, she can't be bringing in that softer conditioning that was her look that was winning for her this year when she gets into those higher level shows? So yet to be determined. They have a great camp over there. I'm sure they're going to figure that out. But let's go ahead and go into that first call out and go from there. So look at this show and look at the heavy hitters in this show. I mean, man, there's so much talent in this show. This is like a junior Olympia level show. I mean, pretty much all the names are there. You're missing Jennifer, but the names are, look at this first call out, just pure craziness. This is an Olympia call out. And I would expect that these girls that you're seeing here most of them are going to be top 10 in the Olympia. And this is going to be probably comparable to the first call out that you're going to see at the Olympia. So there's a couple missing here. I think there's still going to be some you're missing. Obviously Jennifer, I think Daraj is going to be in there too. She's not in there, didn't do this show. So first call out comes out, and obviously the names that I've already mentioned are there. You know, Sandy's getting her first look at everyone, is making some changes around. Really surprising first move was Allison moving out Janet getting moved to the outside. Definitely a shocker there. You know, I was like, wow, did Allison really bring her conditioning this time? I think that's always been an issue with Allison. Sure, her conditioning comes in too tight sometimes, and them nailing it. I think that they got really close to nailing this condition. Laura Lee gets moved in next to Ashley, and there's a 7-person call out, so Laura Lee is dead center there. No surprise there. And then they looked at Janet. Janet obviously awesome in the game. She worked her way back up. I don't know if she was ever down there for a second, or just positioning everyone. To me, it looked like they needed to have a second look at her before they decided where to place her. Now, going into this show, when I was looking at Janet, Janet looks almost where she was when she left the Olympia stage. You know, it's her first show back. I do think that she was just a little bit smaller than she was when she won the Olympia. I think she was a little bit less full. That time off, she's probably just trying to nail her conditioning again, nail her fullness again. It's hard to come back after taking, you know, a year off on your first show, especially at this level of show. You know, what Janet didn't lose 100% was her overall presentation. I mean, she is just an amazing, her posing is just so good. Right up there with Laura Lee's. Laura Lee's presentation is, you know, top level presentation here. So looking at this is basically where that first call out kind of stayed. Wasn't too many surprises. I thought that just based on the week prior, Ashlyn winning Girl Power was gonna move in here, but they never moved her in. You know, India actually stayed here the whole time, and then they ended up doing a top 4 callback at the end here. So really, it wasn't shocking, but there was some surprises in there for sure. I do think the judges got it right. I think that I actually think this is one of the judging scenarios where I actually fully agreed with everything on the judging. I think that they pretty much nailed it. I don't think it's very rare where I see judging where I'm like, okay, this is pretty much exactly how I would have judged it. And I do think that this is pretty much exactly how I would have judged it. They did a very good job on this, and it's really tough at this level to do that. Now, looking at this show as it progressed, we had a top 4 callback, which kind of more moved people into positions of where they were, because remember, there was a 7-person call out. So Laura Lee was in the center of that 7-person call out, kind of basically making her first place, keeping her in that first place position. But we weren't sure who was second and who was third, especially with Janet coming back. You know, we weren't sure, is it going to be Ashley? Is it going to be Janet in that third spot? And as the judging progressed and they moved the people in these positions here, it looked like it was 1 and 2 between Laura Lee and Ashley. And I think it actually got a little bit closer here. And they really worked them. They posed them a lot. I mean, there was times where you could tell they were talking. And that's when you come up with these. When you see these scores that are perfect, you see these 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 scores. Generally what's happening is it's really, really tough. The judges are all talking to each other, and they're trying to come up with reasons why this person's first, reasons why this person should be second, reasons why this person should be third, until they kind of, come up with those, the reasons. They all talk about it. So it means it's really, really close. Even though it looks like it's far, it usually means it's really close, because the judges had to talk about it and figure it out and go over it with each other before they can decide, okay, this is who we're placing first. This is who we're placing second. So, and that's where you come up with these type of, 5, 10, 15, 20 scores, which people don't understand. They're like, how could 5 judges pick these girls absolutely perfectly and all agree 100%? Well, you got to understand, it's tough for these judges when the girls look this good. And when they look this good, sometimes you gotta have conversations about it. And so that's what's happening with that. And where were the differences? Where were the differences for everyone here? And I think that, they nailed it. Looking at the overall package. Now, let's go ahead and look at the packages in between all of them on the glutes and hamstrings. So, girls, if you're trying to get to that upper level, this is what you want to look at here. So there's full glutes that aren't squared off. Okay, so you're not looking for the full squaring of the glutes is not there. You're looking at balance from upper to lower body. You're looking at roundness and fullness to the hamstring. So roundness, but you don't see any separation here. No crazy adductors. So you look at their adductors. They're not crazy developed. You're not seeing any deep V's on any of these girls here. You're seeing a little bit of quad development, but you're not seeing any crazy quad development. It's a nice defined amount of muscle on the quads without too much quad. Now, if I'm going to fault anyone here in the quad department, I would say that that Laura Lee's quads at the bottom here are just very slightly starting to get that hard edge here. But if you see here the taper of the quad, how it comes down nice and round. Janet has a great taper to her quad here where it's nice and round. You're not getting that bottom development being too much there. Just a tiniest bit. I would watch that for Laura Lee, and a little bit here too, just a tiniest bit. So, but this is bikini. This is pro bikini. You want to push it without going too far. I think that Laura Lee did a great job at pushing it, but not going too far in the muscle department. But I do think that they're probably having conversations with her at this point, just be careful with how much muscle you have. Just be a little bit careful. Now, the next thing you want to go into is balance between upper and lower body. And I do think that that's one thing that Laura Lee has really focused on and really fine-tuned. She used to be, a little bit more bottom heavy, but now it's pretty hard to pick up any imbalance issues. And that's another thing with Ashley too. With Ashley, she was, if you look at her 3 years ago, she was a little bit bottom heavy. She's really worked hard to develop her upper body. Looking at Janet, her balance is great. I think that she can use a little bit more fullness, and I think that's what separated Ashley and Janet right now is that Janet could just use a little bit more fullness in her legs. Ashley definitely has the development factor there in the legs. You could see here there's a clear difference in size between those two legs. Ashley is more comparable to the other two here, and Janet just needs to fill out her frame, I think, just a little bit more. And it was there before. I think it's just her first show back. I'm not sure of how her prep went, if it was a tough prep and to get this lean, she had to sacrifice a little bit of size doing cardio. I don't know. But I expect her to be 100% full again, probably within her next couple shows. So just needs a little bit of time. But balance-wise, pretty balanced from upper to lower body, pretty balanced. When you're looking at these overall physiques, the balance is there. I think that you could use a tiny bit more glutes development here on this upper outer edge, and that would probably push her up a spot. But overall, everything's looking really good. I think, obviously, being Ashley's coach, it's hard to do these things and be completely, out there with it. But Ashley's pretty open about it, so it makes it nice for me to be able to just talk openly about it. But the one thing that we're going to do this year is bring up the upper body a little bit, take a little bit of time off at a certain point. Where she's going to take a little bit of time off now going into the mile high to try to develop her upper body a little bit more. Not going so much show to show, just giving herself a few weeks in between the shows so she can eat a little, so she can grow a little and get that development there. Now for the Olympia, we're going to have probably an 8-week period, 7-week period before the Olympia where we can really focus on developing that upper body and getting her to be competitive when she runs into the bigger competitors. So expect to see a fuller package from her going show to show throughout this year. You really should keep an eye on it because she's working really, really hard on it. She's very dedicated to it. So I expect to see that coming in pretty soon here. Now, as the girls move and start going into their back walk, another thing that you're going to see some big improvements on with Ashley is going to be on her back walk. Really, really improved on her overall posing. Even the judges are saying, hey, your posing is looking great these days. But look at all these girls in their posing and on their walks. If you are trying to be Bikini Pro, this is one of the shows that you should be watching closely, watching how their hips are swaying from side to side in that back walk, watching their movement in that front walk, and that is your top 4 right there. So really surprising top 4. Not so surprising on the top 4, but it was just surprising that who wasn't in that top 4, more so than really who was. I was really surprised at this one going into this show. As I said, I did think Ashlyn was going to be a strong argument for that top 4. So that one was a surprise. And again, looking at her physique, it's a comparable physique to what she was winning with all year. So I'm curious to what they're going to do over at that camp to change things up for the Olympia. But this is such a good lesson for anyone doing this show who didn't get the placings that they wanted to get, because this is what you're going to run into at the Olympia. So now you know, okay, I need to change the game plan up. You talk to the judges. What do I need to do for the Olympia? Now, as far as the individual physiques goes, I'm going to go into a real quick, brief rundown of everyone. Honestly, with where Laura Lee is here right now, I don't think, when you're doing this good and you're winning at these shows, especially of this caliber when everyone's on point, it's one of those things you really don't want to make too many changes here. And I honestly don't think she should make any changes. I think she brings this exact package to the show and to the Olympia, and she's got a very strong chance at winning the Olympia this year. You could be seeing the year of her Olympia win, the run up to it. She's got a lot of arguments for her. From the back, she definitely has that wow factor. Her posing is awesome. She has the wow factor. She is probably the most developed in the legs and glutes on that stage, which would be the only thing that you could kind of say about her. It's like, is it too much for Bikini? Obviously it's not. She's winning shows. So when people are arguing that and saying, oh, it's too much for Bikini or whatever as her downfall, you get, again, she's pushing it to the point where the judges are agreeing and saying it's not too much for Bikini. So you go off what the judges said. The judges say it's too much, then yeah, you bring it down, but that's obviously not the case. So she's pushing the limits 100%. I do think a tiny bit, where I see it is I think she's pushing the limits just a tiny bit in the quad, but the judges are giving her the wins, and that's not the feedback she's getting. So my personal opinion definitely doesn't matter. The judges does. So, with her, keep it the same. Don't change anything going to Olympia. You're winning right now the way it is. You're winning with perfect scores against the toughest competition out there. Keep it the same, and your odds are going to be pretty strong there going into it. So don't fix what's not broken type of scenario for her. So now going into second place, Ashley. The really exciting thing about Ashley is with Ashley, there are some areas of improvement that the judges have vocalized that she can make improvements going into the Olympia. So that is actually really exciting and actually should be really scary for the other competitors because she got top 3 last year at the Olympia. She just beat Janet at this last show, and she has some more room for improvement, probably more room for improvement on her upper body than I think anyone in that like top 6 category there. So Ashley, with time off going into the Olympia, growing this year and taking some time to actually grow and fill out her physique and give herself that time is a scary thought, knowing she just got 3rd last year. So if she could fill out this upper body and bring the same conditioning she had last year at the Olympia, which I think will happen. Obviously, I think that I'm her coach. But the factors of her going into the East Coast, sometimes that the humidity of the East Coast seems to do something with her skin where she gets just a tad bit softer. You don't want to ever use that as an excuse, but it's happened a couple of times and it's kind of hit and miss out there. She's from Las Vegas. It's a dry humidity. I think it does really, really good for her skin. There's no second guessing on if she's going to, soak up any of that humidity, and having that extra time to build out her shoulders and going into the Olympia is going to be a huge plus. And I think she could shock the world. People need to keep an eye on her for sure this year. I think that this year is going to be one of her best chances at regaining her title and getting that 4th Olympia title. Now, the only hard part about that is going to be making sure she shows up in the same conditioning with having 8 weeks going into the show. It's different for her. It's different for me with her. We rarely take off that much time. So that's going to be the only hard part, is nailing the conditioning with that much time off. Come Olympia time, it's game mode. Her mindset going into the Olympia, there is no, you think she's dedicated the rest of the year. Wait till she's at the Olympia, and her mind frame is just 100% perfect dedication. Never have to worry about it. So I don't think it's going to be an issue, but it is something that we have to try. Something new to both of us. So we will see, but expect to see a little bit fuller upper body from Ashley this year in all the shows, but especially at the Olympia. Now, as we pull up Janet, Janet has never been the most muscular competitor. It's always been about her flow, her beauty, her lines, her structure. Structurally, I don't know really anyone who hangs with Janet. Really wide clavicle base. Crazy wide clavicle base. Great square shoulders that are still feminine. Just perfect lines. The only thing that I always wanted to see a little bit more out of Janet was just a tiny bit more in the V taper from her lats. And then in this show in particular, just looked just a tiny bit undersized to where she was prior. Not a lot. So I don't want that to come off like saying she's small or anything like that. I just think she was just a few percentages down from where she was before. I don't think that's going to be a hard thing to fix. This is her first show back. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. I think she's going to put that together. It's not going to be an issue for it all coming forward in maybe a month or so. Now, remember, she is an Olympia champion. She does not need to qualify for the Olympia, but I do think you'll see her competing again this year, based on what I've heard. Now, looking at her back pose, Bikini has gotten more full in the glutes. She has kept up with the development of the Bikini in the glutes. Those tie-ins are awesome. They are all the way in. You can see right here on this upper outer edge, there could be just a little bit more development, just a little bit of fall off on that glute there. I think if you just develop that just a tiny bit, she'd have that perfectly developed glutes for Bikini. And again, legs were just a tiny bit slimmer than everyone else's that were in that top 4 grouping. Shoulders look awesome, as I've said before. That back pose looks great on her. I don't think she needs to really change anything there. Now, rounding out 4th place, going into Liana. Honestly, Liana is really quite impressive. She's got great flow. She's got a great glow to her look. There's just sometimes competitors have this kind of glow to their skin and flow that just really shines on stage. So definitely a name I think you're going to be seeing. I don't think there's too much to correct here on her physique, honestly. A couple little things that I see. I do feel like you got to be careful with the arms. I think they're getting a little bit powerful. And sometimes if you get your arms too big, it can take away from your overall lines. In this scenario, I think she's just pushing it just a hair. The other thing I think is pushing just a hair is just a little bit on the quads. But honestly, we're talking about splitting hairs here at the pro level, and it's not a lot. There's a tiny bit there and that's just my personal opinion on that one. I would bring down the arms just a smidge. Be careful with the quads, bring them down just a smidge, and I think that she'd be perfect with her balance at that point and just give off that perfect bikini look. So there's a lot to work with Liana. Now in that back pose, as I said before, great overall muscle base. I mean, really, really strong muscle base to her. In that back pose, there's not a whole lot to work on. I think that the only area that can get a little bit more developed is this upper outer edge of the glute here, which is like a common thing you're hearing from me. I think that the other thing too is you see this is a pretty powerful tricep from that back pose. I think it is a little bit much in that back pose. You can see that tricep. So maybe just switching up the posing a little bit so the arm doesn't look, so thick. And maybe even widen up the back just a hair to make the waistline look a little bit smaller from the back. And I do think if you develop these glutes just a tiny bit on that upper outer edge, it would make the waistline look a little bit smaller. That's going to be one thing I think to really perfect this physique is give off that illusion of a smaller waistline from the back by, obviously having the V taper and having development of the glutes. It's going to help that quite a bit. But again, we're talking about splitting hairs on perfection here on these competitors. So these are the tiny little things I think that can make some serious improvements. And when you get to this level of this high level bikini, pro level, these are the little things that separate the good from the great. Now, rounding out 5th place, you have India, who's obviously coming back from a good amount of time off. I think this is her 3rd show back, if I'm right. So awesome first call out, beating some awesome competitors. I mean, she beat Ashlyn, who's been on a rush right now. So that alone is a huge accomplishment. It just tells you that she is on the cusp of getting her Olympia qualification and being back on the Olympia stage. Now, India has come back with a lot of muscle. That is definitely, it's apparent when she's on stage. A lot of muscle and very dense muscle on top of that. So you could tell she's been lifting weights, and she's been lifting weights for a while. That muscle has that kind of just that density that you see from someone who's been doing this, lifting weights for a while. You can kind of see that density in the muscle, which is a great thing. Now, the only thing that I would say is she is pushing the muscle a little bit. I'd be careful with how much muscle she's bringing to the stage. I don't think it's too much yet, but it is definitely apparent. And there's some scenarios, especially with her compact frame, where it does look like she's overpowering some of the competitors next to her. Nothing really wrong with her physique in terms of that. The only thing that I would see that I would like a little bit just improved on would be her core area. I would love to see just a little bit of development, just like a kiss of detail in her core here, just a tiniest bit, nothing crazy, but just a little bit more there. Overall, really, really good physique. I think that we're going to see her win a pro show here, probably the next show she goes after. From the back pose with India, I mean, crazy glutes, crazy shape. The tie-ins are really, really deep. She's got a really deep tie-in. If you look, it kind of goes to her mid thigh. It's like, I think it's like one of the lower tie-ins I'm seeing in Bikini right now. The only thing that I would say about her on her tie-ins is this tie-in here does appear to have just a little bit more detail, a little bit more development than this tie-in. So that's something that could probably be fixed with posing. I've seen it a couple of times. Also seeing just a little bit of hamstring separation, but not too much hamstring separation. It's just right at the limit. It's just she's got a lot of muscle, so everything that she does is right at that Bikini limit, you know? So, and that's where Bikini is these days, right? Bikini is pushing the envelope. If you're looking at a girl and you're saying, does she have too much muscle for Bikini? And you're not sure, she probably has the right amount. That's just how crazy Bikini has gotten. If you look back at the pictures at like 2013, 14, even 15, the amount of muscle that they have now was comparable to like figure was prior. It's crazy how muscular the girls are getting in Bikini, but it still has that feminine flow to it. And yeah, she's right there, pushing the limits and pushing the envelope for Bikini. Now, one of the girls I was really curious about seeing was Allison going into this show. Of were they going to nail that conditioning this time? And I think they did a very good job at that conditioning this time. I think this is definitely the best conditioned that she's brought. Sometimes she brings too hard of conditioning, and this time I think that they got really, really close to nailing it. I think there's some minor changes that need to happen, like in the posing routine itself. And if you go through the pictures, you can kind of see, but the overall package that they brought this time, I think, is pretty much where she needs to be in terms of her overall conditioning. It's not too crazy. It's not, but that's always the thing with her is you just don't know how crazy her conditioning is going to be. So I think she fine-tunes the posing routine a little bit. She brings this level of conditioning, and she works a little bit on her balance in her posing. And I think that's going to be honestly one of the bigger factors for her, because right now she poses kind of bottom heavy, but she's not super bottom heavy. It's just how she's posing when she's in these overall poses. Really, really impressive physique. She actually has the lines of someone I could see. Honestly, with the lines that she has, they're pretty crazy. If you look at her lines, I mean, tiny waistline, great hips, great flow. The skin has that shine to it. But the only problem is that her glutes are a little overpowering to her in this front pose. Not so much in the back pose, and then that posing I think can use some work. I do think that she could be in the top 5 of the Olympia. Honestly, her physique is so good. If she fine-tuned this right, she probably could be a Miss Olympia. I mean, her physique is that crazy. It's one of those wow factor physiques. You kind of look at like a Laura Lee. She has that wow factor to her physique. Allison has that to her too, but it's going to be really hard to fine-tune this. It's going to take a lot of fine-tuning to bring that perfect package from her. But once she does and she gets that posing down, I mean, there is no stopping her. She is going to be a real force. So already is. I mean, placing 6th at this show is no joke, you know. And she does great at the Olympia too. But she is on the cusp of greatness here. This is the best that they brought. I think some fine tuning, and it's game over, you know. So anyway, that is what I got for you from the Pittsburgh Pro. Hopefully you guys liked to hear what I had to say, and I'll be doing these every now and then on some of these shows. Just let me know. If you want a physique assessment, you can always do that via the website. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you later.